Volker Turk cited atrocities perpetrated by Hamas on October 7th and the ensuing hostage crisis, but he also called Israel's assault on Gaza a form of collective punishment of Palestinians. For some insight, let's turn to Geoffrey Robertson, former UN war crimes judge, human rights lawyer, and author. Geoffrey, thanks for being on this program to talk about a rather complicated topic. So what is your take? What is your take on what Volker Turk had to say? Based on international law and Geneva Conventions, what Hamas has done with the October 7th attack and Israel's response that has led to thousands of deaths, does that in fact constitute war crimes?
Well, there are war crimes on both sides, quite clearly. Hamas, by killing civilians, by taking hostages, committed very serious war crimes, and that can't be forgiven or forgotten. But Israel had a right to self-defense, but it must be exercised, as lawyers say, proportionately. And what is proportionate about attacking a refugee camp to kill one Hamas operative when you kill 50 innocent refugees at the same time? Is that proportional? I don't think a philosopher or a war crimes judge would think it was. And yet these incidents, and they must be taken on a case-by-case basis, do put Israel in the dock. I think the only difference between Hamas war crimes and Israeli war crimes is that Israel can advance a defense, but that defense of proportionate response to Hamas cannot go as far as Israel is going. I mean, it's the de facto occupier of Gaza, and it's entitled
Well, Geoffrey, that was my question. Does Israel's occupation of West Bank and what's happening in Gaza right now, does that amount to some kind of violation of international law?
Well, the United Nations think so, but it's a complicated question. And in fact, Israel is the occupier, whether rightly or wrongly, and it's got to look after, in a humanitarian way, the population. It's entitled to tell the people of North Gaza to move to the south, but it's not entitled then to bomb them and make it just as dangerous for them as it is in the north. I mean, that is outrageous. So it would be, if you like, satisfactory for Israel to have a ceasefire in the south. But it's not doing that. It's simply offering humanitarian pauses of a couple.
So are there legal protections, Geoffrey, are there legal protections for schools, for hospitals, for mosques, for medical personnel, for ambulances?
It is a war crime to bomb all those places: hospitals, refugee camps, schools, and so on. There have been massive attacks on schools on the basis that they're hiding Hamas people. But you've got to be proportionate. It is simply not justifiable if you're put in the dock. That's the next question, that you can go as far, I would have thought, as Israel has gone. But sadly, there is, while there is an international criminal court, it is very unlikely that Mr. Netanyahu and his right-wing cabinet members and his army commanders will end up there, or indeed that the Hamas leaders who should be prosecuted would. But I would say this: if Hamas were to release the hostages, that would mean that Israel would have far less of a defense than it has now. It would have no defense.
Well, we're running out of time. I just want to make one other point. So, Geoffrey, there's also another war going on, and that's what's happening in Ukraine, when residential areas, when mosques, when churches, when schools and hospitals were attacked by the Russians there, the Western world didn't mince any words and called that war crimes and violation of international law. But it doesn't seem, the same does not seem to apply to Gaza, at least not in the Western world. Am I right or wrong?
Well, that's a matter for a political scientist, but as a judge, I can simply say that there is not a great deal of difference. Obviously, Ukraine was attacked in a wicked way because it had done nothing to provoke the attack. Hamas had provoked the attack, there's no doubt about that. So that is the only difference. But in fact, the bombs that are raining down on cities in Ukraine, the question of whether they're a war crime is no different to the bombs that are raining down on Gaza.
Geoffrey Robertson, giving us some guidance on a very complicated issue. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you.